Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we'll actually start. We've let in a couple of more people, and Angelique, my co-host, will be managing the chat room. She'll also be posting some brochures of ASDSA into the group as well, into the chat group, and she'll continue to admit more participants as we go along. But just a few house rules. If you can, please, just again, make sure that all your microphones are muted. We will mute from our side as well. Your video must be turned off just because of Zoom tends to be a bit unstable when there are too many videos on. If you do have a question, please raise your hand and you can then put on your video and give your comments or raise your questions that you may have. And if you're not sure how to do that, please just pop it into the chat and Angelique will assist you and guide you through that. Again, welcome to our first virtual Gauteng ASDSA networking event. My name is Tanya Roda, and I'm the regional chair for the Gauteng West region. I'm really delighted to see that we have quite a few participants that have joined the session today. And I want you guys to know that the session today is, I want it to be very interactive, simply because of the fact that, we need to understand as ASDSA what your challenges have been during the lockdown. Whether that be positive or whether it be negative, we really just need to gauge an understanding of how COVID-19 as well as the national lockdown has affected you, your business, as well as your stakeholders, your learners, and your clients that you deal with. So just would like to, in advance, thank Angeline for admitting all participants. And as mentioned, we've gone through the house rules. We will also be recording the session, and this is purely for ASDSA's record keeping. So to kick off today's discussions, I'd like to first gain an understanding of the group and everyone that is part of the group today. We will be putting up a poll now just to understand how many people are members of ASDSA and how many are non-members of ASDSA. So Angelique will put up the poll for you.
Sorry, Tanya, I'm actually struggling with my...
Just give us a moment.
Tanya, I'm struggling to get the poll up. It's saying I am logged into another device and I'm not. So I'm struggling to get it to work now. So we'll need to just ask people to raise their hands instead.
Okay, no problem. Can everyone that are members, please just raise your hand so that we can see how many members are in the group? Oh, wow, we've only got one member so far. And the rest are non-members. That's fantastic. Okay. Angelique, I think then let's rather bring up the presentation on ASDSA. And Leah, just bear with us. We will just go through who ASDSA is, what our main mission is, our function, who do we represent, and how do we assist our stakeholders. If you can just bring up the presentation. And we'll go through that, and then once we've gone through who ASDSA, just so you can gain an understanding of who we are, we can then jump right into the discussions around how the lockdown has affected you and your business. So in terms of ASDSA, we are a professional body. We are called the Association for Skills Development of South Africa. And you can see on the screen there, we've got the different types of benefits, the benefits of being a member, how you become a member, as well as the various designations that you can apply for as being a member of ASDSA. So ASDSA, the main function of us is we represent and we are the voice of your skills development providers, which are your normal training providers, STFs, assessors, moderators, facilitators, HR managers, training managers, BE consulting, consultants. We service everyone basically within the training space. And what our mission is to really understand challenges that are faced, that our industry is faced with. We lobby with government, we engage with the CETAs, we engage with the Department of Higher Education and Training on behalf of all of our members. And we also have lots of workshops that we host before lockdown. Since last year, I became the chair in July last year. And every month I used to host a networking event where we would bring a guest speaker from the industry in to give a talk and then just have a networking session. And, you know, we found it very fruitful. Lots of people managed to get business out of the networking sessions as well. You're able to, as when being a member of ASDSA, you're able to apply for the different designations. So currently we have 3 designations. Number 1 is the Skills Development Technician, the Skills Development Practitioner, and the Skills Development Master. If you would like to find out more information about how you can be awarded your designation, you're welcome to contact us. You're welcome to go to the ASDSA website and just obtain that information, or you can contact me directly after the webinar. Ange, can you just move the presentation? Okay, and you'll see there that covering our mission is we do award the designations to competent practitioners. We represent members of the industry and labor forums and everything relating to skills development. So because we have a lot of non-members in the group, please feel free to contact us after the session. My contact details are on the screen, and you can remove the presentation now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us if you'd like to become a member. So the second thing that I'd like to, and this would be the next poll that we would have shared, I just would like to gain an understanding of how many training providers do we have in the group. If all the training providers can please just raise your hands. Okay, we have 1 training provider that's present. Any facilitators, assessors, moderators in the group? Please raise your hand. Okay, any SDFs in the group? HR managers, training managers, please raise your hands. And independent companies, just if you're from a company and you're just involved in skills development within your organization, please raise your hand as well. Okay, this is just for me to get an understanding of the type of participants that we have in the group. So I think I'll just jump right into it then. I'd like to open up the discussions to all of you actually, because we've got a mixed group. There isn't a majority of any specific type of category, whether you're a training provider or SDF. I'd like to find out what challenges you guys have been facing during lockdown. Please raise your hand, and then once I acknowledge you, you can then turn your camera on. So just in terms of how COVID-19 and the national lockdown has affected either you, your business, your clients, or your learners. Tracy, yes, you've raised your hand. You can turn your video on.
Tanya, I think I'm going to leave my video off because my signal seems to be unstable. But hi, hello, and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us.
So in my space, I mean, obviously the lockdown has presented many challenges. One thing in particular, from a skills perspective, that is becoming particularly challenging to manage is learnerships.
Yes, yes.
So I share with you just the highlights of our challenges, and it would be great to hear, you know, I mean, I don't know if we've got relevant, you know, the relevant stakeholders in this group, but it would be great to know what other people's challenges are. And can I also just say, obviously I couldn't access your link via the email because it said that this meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. So I just used the link that somebody put in our chat group. So I'm just wondering if a lot of people are struggling to get in, because I'm not seeing an email sent to everyone to say join via this link.
And
So
thank you, Angelique will check that.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, so the first issue we had is obviously having, learners having to stay at home during lockdown and continue to get stipends. And then our CETA came back to us in June saying they can no longer afford to continue to pay stipends for learners who are not going back to work. And that learners have to go back to work, otherwise they will cease to pay stipends. So that has now started, and also if you have an outsourced model, in certain instances, you're also reliant on those host employers to put in place their COVID measures. And there's the capacity issue, because you can't have everyone back at the office at the same time. And as it is, as an employer, our new ways of working is actually now a remote way of working. We don't. It's the rule now. Working from home is the rule. The exception is to go to the office under only specific conditions and permissions. So you're managing this now, and we're now dealing with a spike. So people are catching taxis, and people are staying off, saying they have a cold or they have a temperature or whatever the case may be. We're having our training providers who seem to be having massive trouble, or had been having massive trouble, just keeping everybody on board. We have a very big problem in this country that is unfortunately not getting the attention that it needs from government around this. The whole concept of learnerships has been rooted in this support structure of getting stipends. You get into, it's not like an internship or whatever elsewhere. You actually get a stipend. You get paid something to give you the means to travel up and down and go and learn, to attend your classes, to work, right? So if they are not, by virtue of this very contract, able to learn, it means they're not fulfilling their contract. It means your learnership is dead in the water. But we have a broadband and device issue in our country. I mean, we're a third world country, and if you listen to what's happening in the United States, for example, I listened to their, when they have the federal government and the states get together, and their members of parliament, so to speak, get together, and they've been talking about this COVID issue from the word go. They can't keep their college students and their school learners learning from home, because even they have the broadband and device issues. Now, how on earth are we expected to keep it going when, and I read Dr. Blade Nzimande's, I don't know if it was one of these, something he gazetted, I'm not sure, or was it a notice he had sent out where he's saying, we're expected as companies to do everything we can to, to help them. But let's just be realistic about this issue. Companies are struggling to keep the lights on. Companies are trying their utmost to keep people employed and not let their people go in this current economy. So the challenge we have now is, no, you must keep your learnerships going, but people can't learn from home. And you've got the issues between learners not being able to attend classes because either the training provider can't provide the necessary, measures. And then you have some learners who are also just malingering. Some are malingering. And they'll say that they have challenges, they can't get to the training, they can't get to work, or they've got a temperature, they're sick, or they're not really sick. So it's really becoming really challenging to run learnerships on that basis. And I'm just interested to hear what other people's challenges are, and what you're doing to mitigate it, where you have like in excess of 100 learners. It's one thing if you've got 10 learners and you just perhaps now find a way to set them up with laptops and 3G. When you have over 100, it's a different kettle of fish. So yeah, that's where we are.
Thank you, Tracy. I see Ria's also got a hand up, so I will just hand over to Ria. But all the points you raise this is exactly why we wanted to host this networking event, just to get the feedback, because everyone I speak to is dealing with the exact same problem, and it's really frustrating for us in the training and education space. But I'm going to just hand over to Ria before I also just give my comments and my experience. Ria, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. We have very much the same problem in that we have learners and we do CNC engineering training. So we thought we were very proactive at the beginning of lockdown, and we actually couriered the training material to our learners. However, we found that over and above the data question, learners were not really prepared for online training. It's a process where we have to train the providers as well as the learners to be prepared and to accept and get accustomed to the process. We have also found that we needed to reduce the group size in order to honor the social distancing, which obviously led to us extending our date of completion for a particular level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Yes, so let me just check if there's anyone else that would like to provide input. So just from my side, you know, all the points that you touch on, Tracy and Ria, it's extremely frustrating. It's also very sad see the state of affairs within the country, and you know, the challenge is that lockdown has really forced COVID-19 has really forced 4IR down everybody's throats within the world, and unfortunately for countries like ours who really battle with connectivity issues, it's a major concern. You know, even as a company, if you, or a training provider, if you provide laptops to your learners, there's countless challenges that the learners still have. Number one, wherever they are situated. So I know for a fact I've got a group of learners that are in Soweto, and certain areas that are in Soweto, they experience load reduction, which means the electricity constantly goes out. So even though they've got the 3G capability, they've got the laptop, they cannot attend online classrooms because of this connectivity issue. The same thing with, you know, you asking a company or training provider also to incur additional costs by providing these laptops, and then running the risk that, you know, we also live in a very violent country where you have daily robberies, and you have the concern about the laptops and that being stolen as well. And, you know, over and above that, we also have the mentality of I won't even say it's the youth, because it actually spans across adults as well, where, you know, you might not be sick, but you just give that excuse that oh, I've got a headache, or I'm not coming in today because I'm ill. So all these challenges it's very frustrating. We don't see government coming to the party in terms of assisting with connectivity, assisting with the cost of data as well. You know, I look at the training providers that I work with, and a lot of the training providers who actually have moved over to the digital space long before COVID-19, they're even finding it challenging because as much as they'd like to continue with the learnership, they might have a group of learners who are at the company who's able to go into a company and continue with their learnership, but you have the balance of the learners that are unable to. And how does a training provider manage that? They cannot let half the class progress and the other half stay behind. Just to highlight the other issue that we are faced with in this industry is the seaters. So, I mean, I've seen some positive sides of COVID-19. I've seen some negative sides. Some positive sides I've seen, you know, with Mercita, I've always battled, even going to the office and sitting at the office and not refusing to move until they resolve an issue with their system. This year I found during lockdown that, you know, when I raised an issue, they were quick to respond and immediately would put on a action, and I would engage with them. I mean, it's the first time that I actually met some of them that I've been dealing with over email for a while. So in certain things, that has really come to the forefront where seaters are on board. But on the other hand, you have seaters that just don't understand that as you pointed out, Tracy, that learners can't be expected. You also can't put their lives at risk and get them into a taxi and get them to the training center or to the company to be based there, because they're also risking their lives. I mean, you can see what's happening with the taxi industry. It's gone back to 100%, you know. So it's just, there's countless challenges for our industry, even for facilitators who are traditional facilitators, who have never ever trained online, have never been in front of a camera, are now having to venture into that. And training providers are really struggling to just bridge that gap and get the facilitators comfortable in training and teaching online. And the other challenges that training providers are also faced with is there's just so many online e-learning systems now available. You know, of course, there must be opportunists and opportunities for that in that particular space. But for training provider, which way do you turn to? What system? You know, you end up having to spend time looking at all of these different systems, trying to figure out which one will work for you. Then knowing that you have to invest the money into this online e-learning system and get all your staff onboarded as well. So just to go back to the learnerships, it is a major problem. Not only with the learnerships, I'm seeing it with the YES program under BE. We have where we basically place a lot of YES learners in SMMEs. And SMMEs are small hosting companies. So again, it's the ratio of how many people are they supposed to have on site. And they're supposed to use this 12 months to also train that YES candidate. You know, and I think we really, really need to see a bit more action from government, especially within the training space, because it's just been completely quiet. There's been legislation that have been changed, amended, but still it's just not getting to the crux of how do we implement learnerships properly. And just to add to this, why we're also hosting the session is because I know that ASDSA has sent out some surveys during lockdown, but you know, it's always best to engage in this manner directly with stakeholders, just to understand all of these challenges. And we definitely will be noting everything. That's why we're also recording the session, because we're definitely going to take this up with government. We do have a task team that we put together about a month ago, looking specifically at a few areas. Number one is looking at the different types of e-learning systems, understanding that for training providers who are small training providers, they cannot invest this amount of money into these types of systems. So we're looking at that. We're looking at possibly, you know, the platforms where there is zero costs for data, because as a facilitator, you're now having to pay your facilitators more because they need to have an internet connection. You're having to possibly incur costs for learners to have connectivity. So we have a task team looking at that. We're going to have a task team that also will break away and look at the CETAs and just the engagement from the CETAs, the legislation that's been put out that is contradicting itself, which I'll touch on later. So there's a number of things, and what I want to get out from this session is noting all of these challenges, which is not really unique because everyone is experiencing this. Our other regions in Cape Town and Durban, and they will also be hosting these sessions, and we will then consolidate that information and take it through to government and sit down and try and really put pressure on getting them to understand where we as a sector are. That's actually a very important sector, ensuring that our youth are upskilled, you know, and that they are given the support that they need. Okay, enough from my side on that particular point. Is there any other challenges under training providers, under learnerships, that anyone else has? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see the group is quite quiet. So I'm going to jump into just the challenges also that I have come across in terms of the facilitators, assessors, and moderators. So facilitators, assessors, and moderators are also, they find themselves in a very difficult situation because they're independent. There are few that are permanent with certain training providers, but majority of them, 90% of them, are independent contractors. And they're finding it very difficult because you have training providers who have all these challenges that they are faced with, companies with the challenges that they are faced with. So they're finding it quite tough to find work during these times. If I know there was one or two facilitators, assessors, and moderators, you're welcome to also contact me after the session. I do think that you know, the positive side of COVID-19 is really pushing us also to adapt, to survive, adapt the way we do business. Those who can adapt and adapt in this environment. So just in terms of facilitators, assessors, and moderators, I am currently, over the past 2 months, have been mentoring a few facilitators, assessors, and moderators to become consultants in the skills development space. Because there's a lot of work in the skills development space. You know, it's companies, training managers, HR managers, they all have to navigate not only COVID-19 now, but they have to navigate the BE space as well. And, you know, you would think that the BE Commission and the whole BE structure would also come to the party in COVID-19. They've made no changes to in terms of businesses meeting the skill spend or meeting the spend that they need to incur to achieve the specific BE level. And it's very difficult for companies to achieve the spend when you have the complications of not having training go ahead as usual. When you're having suppliers that are unable to work because of lockdown restrictions. So all of that impacts companies on their BE level and the spend that they need to incur. And I'm really open to having facilitators and independent contractors contact me if they are really battling and just finding it difficult during this period. And let's just open up our minds to a different way of working, a different way of, don't always just focus on, if you're an assessor, that you're only going to be assessing, and so you're only looking for assessing work. Open yourself up to potentially becoming a consultant and looking at other areas in the skills development space that you could potentially assist in. I'm starting to see a gap as well in terms of just providing support, emotional support as well to the learners. I have one learner that I had hosted in two different companies last year. And when a learnership came to an end, none of those companies took her on permanently. Now, I also have a small business, and I decided, you know, she was such a gem that I really needed to give her this opportunity, and I took her permanently into my company. And she's been absolutely phenomenal. She, luckily, before lockdown, I managed to get a 3G connection for her laptop. Well, she had a laptop. And she's been absolutely phenomenal. There's times that I actually have to tell her to log off at 10 o'clock when I can see that she's still working. Look, she is a diamond in the rough. But, you know, when I speak to her, I hear the despair in her voice, because when I engage with her, and I do a weekly catch up to find out how she's doing, and she lives in Soweto, and I don't think that the news actually also shows the impact of COVID, apart from the numbers that they're reporting on, they don't show the impact that's taking place within the townships. And she has indicated to me that they're so scared to go out because within the townships, there are still many people that are walking around without masks. And she said that, you know, all around them, people are dropping dead. They are unfortunately passing away. Youngsters are, because they're not being safe, they are coming back home, they're giving it to their grandparents that they live with, their older parents, and she just has death all around her. And I think, you know, yes, we have the learners and we have the learnerships and yes, programs. And I think sometimes it also just takes a matter of reaching out to learners and also just understanding where the type of situation that they find themselves in. I had a number of learners who have had to attend funerals during this period. So I think also during this period, it's just important to reach out to the learners and just to touch base with them as training providers, as companies, just touch base with them and find out emotionally how they are also coping. Because remember, learners don't always open up to their supervisors or their providers in terms of what they're going through. So I think we just need to also consider that. Is there any other comments or anyone would like to add anything else? Okay, I'm going to come to the legislation that we've seen changes to during this period. It's been quite a few. So the workplace skills plan, the deadline for the workplace skills plan is always the 30th of April. We saw them extend this deadline to the 30th of June, which was really great. I think on the CETA's part, it was really a good thing for government to blanket extension, because I still found that even though when they moved the extension date to June, sorry, first to, yeah, it was to May, I think, and then to June. When it was extended to May, I still found some seekers actually saying that if you did not, as a company, submit a request for extension, that you will not be granted that extension, even though government gave a blanket extension for everyone. And I then started seeing that in May, when May came and went, government again gave a blanket extension to the end of June and again to the end of July. And I noticed that from when they extended to June, that those seaters who had been indicated to stakeholders that they had to apply for an extension via email or else it wouldn't have been accepted, I saw that they completely opened up all of their systems. This is the other challenge that's really frustrating for us in the industry, is the government puts out these new regulations, but then the seekers don't comply with it. And I don't know if everyone else has also been experiencing just the lack of compliance in terms of what government puts out and what actually gets implemented. Another one that just boggles my mind is the SDL payment holiday. So government also put out a new regulation that there will be an SDL payment holiday for all companies that will be implemented, a 4-month payment holiday. Now this has huge impacts on not only on the BE side, but on the seeker side as well. So while the SDL payment holiday was welcomed by businesses, especially businesses that have been battling, it really, what boggles my mind is that when they put this blanket payment holiday in place, when companies actually that wanted to continue paying the SDL levies, that particular portion was completely grayed out on the SARS system, on the e-filing system. So obviously companies then realize that there's no ways that they could pay their levies. However, I have 2 clients who fall under mixed SETA, and they said to me that they will continue to pay their levies. And I questioned, but how would they do that if you can't submit it through e-filing? And they said that they were informed by the SETA that if they, companies who have taken up the opportunity of implementing the SDL payment holiday, that they will be disadvantaged when they try to apply for funding in the future, because the SDL payments will have an impact on SETAs, which I'll touch on now as well. You know, I cannot understand how a SETA can tell a company that you have to continue paying your levies, even though you cannot submit it on the system. Send us the proof of payment, that or keep your proof of payment, and that we will request when you wish to apply for funding down the line. The other issue that I found with SDL payment, which I think it was early last week, there was a notice that was sent out by, I think it was Blade, I can't remember, but it was from the Department of Higher Education and Training. And they basically said that the companies, so in terms of submitting your workplace skills plan, in the regulations, the mandatory grant, which is the 20% of your 1% skills development levy that you automatically get back by submitting your workplace skills plan. In order, so it's gazetted that in order for you to apply for that mandatory grant, well, receive the mandatory grant, you must have submitted your workplace skills plan by the deadline date. And you must be up to date with your skills development levy payment. Now, with the payment holiday, they've now released a notice saying that, unfortunately, the companies have not continue paying the levies, the mandatory grant will be rejected. Now, that puts companies in a very difficult situation, because they were not able to pay their skills development levies because the system had blocked it out. But how can you now tell companies that they're not going to be able to apply for the, well, not be able to obtain their mandatory grant because of the fact that they couldn't pay their skills development levy? So I know some of ASDSA's regional chairs joined a meeting last week with government just to sit down and hash this out, because they were the ones that put this legislation in place, and now they want to basically negatively impact companies for not having paid the levies. You know, and I just find it really, really unbelievable that they make these regulations in place or changes to their legislation, but it negatively affects companies. And it's out of companies' control as to whether they can pay or not pay. The other impact that the skills development levy payment holiday has is on the SETAs. So SETAs are losing millions of rands. Remember, SETAs, they depend on the skills development levy simply because that funding comes in, that money comes into them, and that money has to go towards the discretionary grant funding, which again is supposed to be made available to companies. Now, I know for a fact that since lockdown, all discretionary grant fundings have been put on hold. I have a few clients that we've applied for funding in January with mixed SETA. I have other companies that we've applied for funding from services SETA before the lockdown. And I think just before lockdown, two of my clients were in the verification phase of receiving the funding. And everything went quiet. And when I followed up again a week ago, they sent me a notice, which is a government notice that said all of the discretionary grant funding has been placed on hold. They will let us know when they have feedback on this. And I asked them, do they have an estimate or an idea of when we will get this feedback? Because companies have to incur the spend. And they just responded and said, please refer to the Gazette. So that's quite frustrating. I know that SETA, for example, has, because of the payment holiday, they have lost 341 million rand. That was supposed to have come in from the skills development levies. They've lost that now. And in total, across all the SETAs, it's a total of 6 billion rand that has not been allocated to the SETAs because of the payment holiday. So, you know, I don't think that they've really thought the payment holiday through very carefully, because you can see the impact on the SETAs, the impact on providers as well as companies. Is there any other comments? No, everybody's so quiet today. Okay, I'll continue. Then another notice that was released. Yes, someone.
You know what, Tanya, it takes a while to actually go in and raise your hand, because I'm actually got this. Yeah. May I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thanks for that. Okay, so thanks for telling us about the mandatory grants. I wasn't aware. I think you and I had that chat previously when Department of Higher Education and Training suddenly realized, suddenly quantified the potential loss of 6 billion rand towards the end of May, and we're talking about retracting that blanket approach, which boggles the mind, because I mean, surely all of this should have been quantified before before it was even put out to industries anyway. Logic just, I don't know, it just fails all comprehension. But so what I'm particularly concerned with now as well is if the WSP submissions have been extended to end of July, which I've seen they have been, do you think that they are going to open up for discretionary grant applications again? Because usually the one begets the other, but now obviously we've got the sensitivity around the holiday and loss of income. What's the buzz around that, please?
So I don't think that we are going to see any discretionary grant funding for the rest of the year. The reason for that is because they've extended the deadline now to the end of July, so the 31st of July. It normally takes the SETA 3 months to analyze all of the workplace skills plans. So normally the submission goes in by the 30th of April. They use May, June, July to analyze, and normally companies receive the approvals around about end of July, beginning of August. That's when you receive your approval letter. So I think that that's going to be pushed out now. So 31st of July, we're looking at August, September, October, November, where we would possibly be seeing approvals for workplace skills plans. And they would then only probably, let's say around about December. I know some SETAs often do that. In December, they release, they open up a window for discretionary grant funding. I think that we probably would only see windows opening for funding in end of November, December, potentially only in January, because we're also now starting to understand the impact that the SDL payment holiday has had on SETAs. But to be honest, it's not very positive. I don't see them opening up any funding windows for the rest of the year. I must have seen services SETA approving already 2 of my clients that I submitted workplace skills plans for. So maybe they will be put under pressure to approve them, but I honestly don't see any funding applications opening up for the rest of the year. Okay, I just want to go into the chat because I see that there is a few comments in the chat. Yeah, so okay, Tracy, you noted about the connectivity issue. Okay, great. I see some networking taking place on the chat there. Lack of synergy. Does ASDSA have a representative at any of the decision-making forums in the DHET that can engage on all SDF? Yes, Mike. So we do have our chair lady, who actually runs the whole of ASDSA. She's quite involved with various government departments. We also have a number of our regional chairs that are very involved. If you do have any issues that you're facing, please can you send that through to me after the webinar, and I'll definitely take that up. It's going to go through what will happen to companies if they don't meet the 60% compliance target of training implemented on the WSP due to COVID issues. To be honest, Mike, I think that at this point, the CETAs are going to probably look to reject WSPs simply because of the fact that they don't have funding to issue out. Yeah, that's really a gray area. But I do think that even, there's different ways that you can implement training. So, you're happy also to engage with me after the session. I'm seeing different ways that some of my smaller providers are and companies are implementing their training. You have to take a blended approach, both on the company side as well as on the training provider side, not only depending on your tools such as Skype and Zoom and Teams, but also WhatsApp. Make use of WhatsApp because that's a platform that's widely used across the world, especially also within South Africa. Just to give an example, I know of one institution, I'm sure I can mention their name, Stellenbosch Graduate Institute. Been doing just at the start of lockdown, they put in a process, so they've got blended learning approach. What they do is they host an hour session where they would basically have the facilitators teaching and doing a session on a particular module. They would then leave the learners, and the learners have to conduct a bit of self-study. So they have to go through that particular section. Then the facilitator would then set up a one-on-one session for anyone who requires that. If no one requires that, they then set up another session, and these are like 45-minute sessions where they would have a group discussion, and the learners can raise whatever queries they have there. And they also ensure that all of these sessions they record. So that recording of the sessions is part of the evidence. It becomes part of the evidence now. And what we're probably going to be seeing is that moderators are going to have to start adapting to the way they moderate, as well as assessors, because during COVID-19, you cannot just depend on the attendance register of the learner, that the learner was present. You have to obviously have a screenshot of the participants that were present in the discussion. You then have to also have the learner's assignments. You have to have the recorded sessions, so that you can see that the learner is interacting as well, because you can host these sessions and have no participation from the learners. So there are different ways to skin the cat in terms of providing training, but in terms of the 60% compliance, I honestly think that CETAs will look for every reason to reject the WSP if you have not met your training plan. WNR CETA had the discretionary grant period open until 31st of July. It was only for specific programs, and they sent the list to the companies. Yes, so I think in certain instances, because there are some probably certain CETAs that had already allocated funding to the discretionary grant pot, and you'll only see those few CETAs will open up a window. But again, I hold my breath, because even though they might have sent out and had a window open, it boils down to the allocation of the funding. So you might have applied, gotten through to the very end, and you're waiting for that funding and the MOU to be sent through to you, and that's where the blockage sits, is that SETAs are now sitting back and all looking at it saying, let's just hold on to this money for now because of the skills development payment holiday. So yeah, it's I don't think it's looking really great, but these are all of the things that we're also going to save the chat, so it's everything that we're definitely going to be consolidating across the regions and then just taking up with the SETAs and with government, and to just get them to understand the challenges that we're facing. I want to see there's no other hands up. I'm going to continue with the other legislations that have come through. QCTO, also this is a positive thing. Any training provider whose accreditation expired that expires during this year, the QCTO released a notice stating that all training providers whose accreditation expires in 2020 will automatically receive renewal until March next year, until the 31st of March 2021. And I am seeing this in action because I've actually waiting for MITSETA. They are taking, it's almost a month now. They are supposed to provide the renewal letter for 2 of my clients. So we are seeing that, the QCTO has gazetted that. However, there's also something else that the QCTO has also sent out a notice, and I've received it from 2 SETAs, where I've tried to apply for accreditation and they've come back and said that the QCTO has instructed them not to take any new accreditation applications in. Now, this also is very frustrating because you have a lot of companies or training providers that were wanting to apply for accreditation at the beginning of lockdown or plan to apply for accreditation during the month of April, May, and this has impacted them now. And this is definitely something that we're also going to be taking up, because you're restricting a company, from opening up that avenue of potential revenue that could help the business survive. I mean, if I look at Services SETA has a 90 working day turnaround time for accreditation application. So from the day to submit your accreditation application, it's 90 working days until they provide you with feedback. And even when you get to the 90-day period, they still don't get back to you. You have to hound them. But I'm advising everybody that wants to get accreditations, proceed with your accreditation applications, get all of your quality management systems, your policies in place, because in any case, if you submit, you can submit online with Services SETA. And if it takes 90 days, it's fine, because that will take us probably to the end of lockdown, wherever that is going to be. I don't think companies should stop. If you're interested in becoming accredited, don't feel despondent. Proceed, carry on, get your submission in, because by the time that they are able to look at accreditations, at least your submission would have gone in. The other legislation that has potentially affected everyone in the industry is the TERS, the Temporary Employee Relief Scheme, which is under UIF. I don't know how many companies have applied for this, how successful you have been. I must say that for my company, this has really helped. I've got, we're a total of 4 employees, and this has really assisted my company, in just applying for that. And I must say they paid out on time, and I know that that's not the experience for every company. There are still companies that are waiting, but we then again have the challenge of corruption within the country, where you just see being paid to employees that are deceased, and I'm not even going to go into the corruption side because we'll be here forever. And then just another thing that I'd like for all of you to take note of, and just keep an eye on your specific SETA's website, because I know the SETA's databases are not always up to date. They'll send out communication, but it doesn't always reach everyone. Just constantly check their websites. A lot of SETAs now over the past 2 months are starting to host webinars where they are engaging with the stakeholders. They're engaging with companies, training providers, to understand the impact of COVID-19. Whether it's really going to result in anything, I don't know. But it's good to have these discussions directly with them and to raise the the challenges that you are having in terms of like your implementing of the learnership and the various training programs. Your question, Mike, about the 60% compliance. You know, those are important questions that need to be raised directly with the CETA. So please do keep an eye out for the webinars. There's quite a number of them running at the moment. Keep an eye out and join the webinars and give your input. Okay, I'd like to find out if there's anything else that anyone would like to comment on or provide input. Okay, Ria, I see you. Sorry, yes, go ahead. Someone is Angelique. Oh, I see. Sorry. Do you have a question, Tracy? Okay.
I do. Sorry, my screen keeps moving every time I'm trying to click the mute button.
No problem. No
I have
problem.
to do this via my phone because of the link. Okay, so the one thing I've got my eye on is the financial sector code, because I'm in the financial sector, so we're looking at skills development in terms of BEE, right?
Yes.
Well, while we all have a target of 6% to do 6%, that our expenditure needs to be 6% of our total leviable amount. That 6% was split out in terms of the generic code, was split out into 2.5% for your unemployed youth, which is bursaries basically to students studying full-time at university, solving that fees must fall problem, no doubt. And the 3.5%, it's now taken the rest of the target to 3.5% on all the other training. And I'm just looking at this and I'm wondering, I mean, are you involved in those discussions at all around skills development and what is absolutely what's necessary now in the industry? Because when I look at our current situation, I mean, already, that was difficult, but given the changes that this pandemic has brought about, it's even more necessary now to upskill and reskill employees. Skills development is that much more important now for the workforce, for people to be able to keep their jobs, to be able to grow into new roles, whether it's in their job or elsewhere if their company can't retain them or their company goes out of business, versus companies trying to chase this target and being disincentivized now basically to invest in training of their staff because you've got to meet their scorecard points, So haven't the new financial sector code hasn't been gazetted yet. And I mean, our financial year ends in March. So we're also looking at this and going, how do we even plan? Because if it's gazetted, it will be without the transitional period, which means that, we're not sure how to plan. And yet we've got to do all of this work just internally to move our workforce forward for this, in this digital transformation. So that is just something that is really topical for us at the moment. And I'd love to hear more. It would be great to know that these discussions are happening and are being well thought out at government level. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. So, I am actually planning to just touch base again with a few of my BE consulting companies that I work with in the next 2 weeks, just to understand, because I have been checking in with them over the past 2-3 months. How is there going to be any amendments that's going to come from the BE Commission in terms of companies still being forced to comply and still being forced to achieve their targets, even though it's very difficult for them to spend? And honestly, they've come back and said that there is no talk of any changes in legislation and that companies are still expected to meet their spend requirements. So I will be touching base again with them in the next 2 weeks just to see if anything has changed. In terms of the bursaries, yes, I am quite involved with assisting clients in spending whatever they need to spend on bursaries for the learners that are full-time at universities and colleges. I think, even during this period, it is, if a company, especially the generic companies, because it applies to them, that they should still look at continuing to assist the bursary learners on campus. A lot of the campuses are working through distance learning and through the e-learning platforms. So I've got a number of learners that I've had to source to get be funded by a specific client. And then just in terms of how do you spend this money on your workforce? Now, this is where the creative thinking comes in. Just to give an example, I assist a lot of my clients, and I am starting to see that move with them where they want to spend internally, they want to upskill their workforce. So what I'm starting to do is to create coaching and mentoring frameworks and models that will be accepted by the verification agents. So in this way, because what I've seen in the skills development space and under the BEE space is that the coaching and mentoring, often you can't claim the full spend because of the fact that it's not accredited training, it's coaching and mentoring that takes place. But I've managed to design a framework where you actually have the coaching and mentoring put into a formal structure, and it is linked to various things like professional body registrations, CPD events, and just creating a formal framework so that the BE verification agent accept it. If they reject it, we are there to motivate as to why it can't be rejected, because it's still for the development of the person. The person is registered with a professional body, so that is accepted. This is just one example, but I am starting to see a move from a lot of companies in trying to just develop their staff. If you look at learnerships as well, in the past, lots of companies would always just say, no, let me just do a unemployed learnership, and because they want to tick the boxes. But often when I engage with companies and I say to them, well, why don't we do an employed learnership? And I find it so strange that a lot of them don't understand what an employed learnership is. And an employed learnership actually helps a company to reach their skills spend target far quicker than what an unemployed learnership does. So, because with an employed learnership, you're counting the person's salary for the 12 months, not the stipend. And the salary amount is much more higher than the stipend. So it helps companies to reach that skill spend much quicker than what they normally would. I hope that has answered your question. I will, once I do engage with the BE consultants and all of the regional chairs have gotten together just to discuss the input that has been given through these webinars, we'll consolidate everything, and I think that we will, as ASDSA, will then release information on the outcome of these webinars and what's the way forward in terms of engaging with government, engaging with the CETAs, and engaging with the BEE Commission as well. Just to answer Ria, I see you've said you've applied for accreditation with Services CETA in December 2019. You're welcome to contact me. I lash the CETAs quite a bit, so they know me very well, and normally when an email comes in, they often jump to answer me. So Services CETA, you can send through to me.
Hi. Oh, Lisedi. Okay, hello, Lisedi. All right, so Mike, hello, welcome to the meeting.
Okay, I don't know if someone else is starting another meeting. Okay, Milani, you can email me about your question. Do you perhaps have info on the TLS scheme with CCMA? I'd work with a lot of HR consultants, so you're welcome to just drop me an email and send me what exactly you need to find out about that. And then I don't see any other questions. I see we have reached our time. We're 2 minutes over. Is there any other questions that anybody else would like to raise? If not, you're more than welcome to contact me. My cell number is there. My email address is there. And I just would like to thank everybody. Thank you for your participation. And I look forward to the next networking session. Please keep an eye out, and we will try to make sure that we have the right links. It has been a bit crazy on the back end for all of us. But thank you very much for joining the meeting today, and I look forward to the next session.